coming up today.
So I would have to see plays when my father dies. I would have to see plays when my father is like not such a great person. That's what like brought about my persona journeys. Like you can be so many things and still be you.
This is Radio Juxtapoz.
Sometimes we do interviews on Radio Juxtapoz that delve into the background of an artist's inspiration. Other times we try to contextualize work within wider narratives, and every so often all the planned questions get thrown in the bin and we just let the conversation get a little bit weird. Today's interview with Umar Rashid, aka Frohawk Two Feathers, is definitely the latter. Umar Rashid is an artist, an MC, a funny dude, but first and foremost, he's a storyteller. Finding the meeting point between revisionist history, cosmology, and indigenous folklore, his paintings depict an unwritten past. Fables of European colonization and insurrection are told through new perspectives, ones that champion the people of colour so often omitted from the books, with a healthy dose of pop culture referencing throughout. As we head into the summer, we're kicking Radio Juxtapoz back in the mix with another series of interviews and investigations with Evan Preco and myself, Doug Gillen. If you are easily offended, I would probably suggest jumping on any one of the many episodes that we have in our back catalogue, because this whole conversation is pretty fast and loose from the jump and contains colourful language throughout. Sorry, Mum. Evan kicks us off by picking Umar's brain about some of his favourite moments in history. Enjoy the episode.
Yeah, since we all live in the countries in which that happens, I always wonder like what your favorite insurrection that you've supported is.
That is such a new direction for the podcast.
It's actually quite a few insurrections. I mean, my number one all-time favorite would have to be the Haitian Revolution, because it was just. I mean, it needed to happen. And then, if you want to talk about modern conflicts, I think the Vietnamese and the French, the French and Vietnamese War, Dien Bien Phu, like that was just amazing from a military standpoint. When they when they took the country back, and then which ultimately led to the Vietnam American War. And what else was there, man?
Why is that your go-to in this very, this question that you probably get all the time?
I don't know, man. It's because it was like freedom struggles happen all the time. Being a Scotsman, I mean, how, after the, what was it? The Battle of Glent?
Hastings?
Culloden? Not Hastings, not 1066. We're not going back that far.
That's like early.
That was, but that actually was the inspiration for what it is that I do, because at that time, basically French-speaking Vikings invaded England, the Norman Conquest. French people, it was the last time that the French, some sort of French was like involved in English politics, because, the language of the Normans was French. So yeah, 1066. No, but I'm talking about there's this. I was actually looking at it. Oh, it's when the Bonnie Prince, when he went against. It was like in 1740 something. Culloden. What was it?
I don't know. I'm quickly googling it to pretend that I know.
It was like the Battle of Culloden. It was like the last battle that pretty much like Scotland was like, oh fuck it, we're not gonna win. It was like after all that, the Longshanks, Braveheart shit.
That documentary.
Yeah. But it was after all of that.
Battle of Culloden, 1746.
Yeah, 1746. Yeah, the Battle of Culloden.
Wow. I didn't even know where Culloden was, never mind the battle of it.
Oh, man, dude, I literally have, I have an encyclopedic memory. Like, I retain all information except shit that could probably save my life.
So Culloden is far north. It's like right up the top. That's why I've never heard of it.
Yeah, they were like, hey, that's just like, hey, let's go to Paisley too. Like, that's up there. Paisley's kind of out of the way.
That's my end. I grew up 20 minutes away from Paisley. I lost the accent.
Yeah, Paisley. Yeah, but I was trying to explain to somebody like where Paisley comes from. Like Paisley comes from India, but the Scottish the mills, the woven mills. Like, so when they brought it, they called the pattern paisley, even though it's totally Indian.
Well, it's just good marketing.
Yeah. So I'm like, the whole world is full of popular misconceptions and horrible shit. And I just bring it to light in a very loose way, like I make it accessible, because if we're at each other's throats all the goddamn time, if we're all like, fuck you and fuck you did this to me, it's just like old school feuding, and that has to end.
At what point in your research do you feel like, okay, I'm ready to challenge this, have fun with this, reinterpret this for work?
That's why I chose, like, I just gave this little... I did this little workshop with the Hammer Museum recently about the malleability of history. And I do believe there are certain times in the historical record where, had things been done differently, we could have averted this modern crisis. But in averting that particular crisis, you invite a new or multiple crises, so it's like, I don't know, man. So I was just like, fuck it. I mean, the way I think, man, I'm a Libra, dude. There is no good, there is no evil, man. It's just a balance. Everything has to be balanced at the end of the day. Otherwise, I can't make Libras have a hard time making decisions because I can't see any other. I only see logical, I'm like a fucking Vulcan, man. I only see logic. I don't see anything else. I mean, I'm not saying that I don't get upset about things like, the status quo of the world or whatever, like systemic racism and shit like that. Yes, that bothers me. That affects me. But I mean, you can continue on a particular path and hope for the best, or you can try to just initiate like a dialogue where we sit back and we find our tribe, so to speak. Because your tribe doesn't always look like you. Your tribe isn't always going to be you. It's a bunch. You can go to any place, any world, and everybody has the same problem. So it's not like this, gargantuan, and also another reason I'm actually going off on so many fucking tangents here.
It's so good.
But I don't use the word white supremacy because I don't believe that white people are inherently supreme. I also believe in the power and the intention of words and the power and intention of images. So, we're like sometimes I think, we all do this. Like we all go about things in a weird, fucked up way because our egos get involved. And even I can't escape my own ego, like, yeah, I know a whole lot of shit. Da, 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 So it's like, I'm fucking flawed too, I don't know. I mean, just like multiple perspectives. At the end of the day, you get this one fucking life. Doug's going to be Doug one time. Evan's going to be Evan one time. Umar's going to be Umar one fucking time. It's not like we're going to like, oh yeah, metaphysically, my soul age is 1,000,000 years. Man, fuck all that, dude. You're going to be you one time. You might turn into some other shit. I don't know how that works. I don't know anything about the end phases of human existence. Literally the fucking spiraling off the goddamn mortal fucking coil. But, oh, wait.
You can swear.
My parents get mad at me all the time when they listen. They go like, you say the F word too much. Like, it's all right. It's
hey,
okay.
Your parents listen? You've never mentioned.
Yeah, they do sometimes. Yeah.
Oh, sick.
Wait, okay, this is interesting because you just said you're Umar once. I want to know Frohawk Two Feathers, Umar.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a split? Is it the same? Is it like...
It's the same. Like Frohawk Two Feathers, Umar, High Fidel, all my graffiti names that I had throughout my life. I just like a little bit. I mean, embodying a persona for me just helps me to enter in a different phase. And also I use it as a marker of the passage of time. Like when people call me High Fidel, I know they know me from rapping. When people call me Frohawk, I know they know me from making art. When people call me Ken Cyclone, I know they know me from getting drunk and probably saying some whack shit or getting involved in a fucking bar brawl, giving somebody a fucking Glasgow kiss, fucking and making music at the same time. So, it's just for me, I just enjoy. I mean, I grew up in the theater. Like my father's a playwright. So I grew up like shifting characters, I had to be I had to embody these particular characters in order to come up with, these personas that influence my worldview. But now it's like, the fucking jig is up.
The jig is up.
It was never. It was like it's done. You know, like no more dancing. It's just like this is me and all of my multifaceted self. But it could also lead to some horrible schisms in the brain, which might lead to a multiple personality disorder down the line. I hope to God that if I ever get like Alzheimer's or some shit like that or dementia, I just, somebody just puts a fucking bullet in me. It's like, it was like, hey, do not resuscitate. Like, fuck that. Like, because I would be like, oh, I'm the great Merlin doctor from, like, shit. Yeah, don't let me ever get dementia, man. Just seal the goddamn blast doors, man. Like,
do you feel that now with Umar Rashid, you're kind of that's the final stage in the monikers, or is there still more? Is there still more to come out?
Yeah, it's definitely the end, man. It's definitely this is my, and I can live with this because Umar Rashid is like it's me. It's the one that is me. It's the name that I've lived with since. It's the name that I lived with since I was born. In all these personas, like Umar Rashid has always been the constant. So I do believe. I don't know. I mean, I might go really. I mean, if I start like a space rock band, I might be like Lord Galactic Cosmo Codpiece. Some weird shit. I don't know.
Lord Codpiece.
Lord Codpiece.
That's the name of this podcast.
You're gonna get some great followers on Instagram with Lord Codpiece as you're at.
Lord Codpiece. I mean, Cameo used to wear a codpiece, like the band, like they did Word Up, like he used to have a codpiece in every video, and I was like, what the fuck? And they were cool too, man, like some X-Men type level codpieces. But dude, the codpiece in itself, I don't know if that's ever gonna make a comeback.
Speaking of fashion, as we are, talk me through your headgear, because obviously the listeners can't see that. Every time I've seen one of your videos on Instagram, it's a new adventure. Like an advent calendar.
This is an advent calendar. This is an Italian parade helmet. It's like the German steel helmet, but it's just a white helmet that they wear in parades. I usually wear like a pith helmet. I just actually saved some birds the other day, and I used one of my straw helmets to make it into a bird's nest the other day. I saved the bird from this gopher snake was trying to eat the babies. And the mother, in her quick reactionary thinking, flung her babies out of the nest, like maybe 2 meters onto the fucking ground. 2 meters. Actually, it wasn't 2 meters.
Doug appreciates your use of meters. It was going to be a struggle if we went to
you
feet.
guys don't use meters? Did you just switch up the system? That was nice. Thank you. That was respect. I appreciate that, man.
He's being really respectful of you.
It wasn't for goddamn Evan, because I was like, oh man, that bitch fell like 3 lengths of a baseball bat. But no, it's so fucking archaic. Like literally the whole fucking world. Whenever I leave this place, I don't know how warm it is. I don't know what time it is. Well, now I know.
You made your bed with Fahrenheit. There's no unit as hard to convert as Fahrenheit to Celsius.
This is the content that people want right now.
The French were like, but Napoleon, the piece of shit that he was, did have his science officers come up with some really cool shit, like the metric system. But everybody in the fucking world uses the metric system, and we still use these archaic, weights and measures like pounds, but that came from England, but it's just like, God damn it, okay, at some point you got to switch the curriculum. At some point, much like, America needs some restorative racial justice, let's squeeze in the goddamn metric system as well.
I like that you've got the priority list there.
Umar, you are a born American man. That one senator or that one rep who gets up there and goes like, we need to switch to the metric system, will be treated like the pariah of all.
Stoned to death.
Yeah.
Oh my God. They tried to do yoga in Alabama, and you saw how that went. Think about the metric system.
Oh, well, I mean, no disrespect to the great state of Alabama, but fuck them. Like the metric system will happen. The metric system will happen in our generation. I would personally see to it. by proxies, and maybe a couple of people might have to sacrifice themselves to this glorious cause of allowing Americans to travel throughout the world and know exactly what time it is, how warm it is, how cold it is, a proper system of weights and measures. Because how the fuck we're going to get to the Star Trek universe if we're over here using goddamn it, I'll take 2 fingers of the Glen left. Well, actually, I guess you can still say it. In Japan, they used to measure things in bushels, like sacks of rice, called a koku. Like it was a unit of measure called a koku.
In a previous incarnation, Umar's hip-hop moniker High Fidel took on another layer of alter ego under the guise of Prince Midnight Dark Force and joined Serengeti and DJ Kofi as the group The Grim Teachers. According to the group's lore, their mixtape There's a Situation on the Home Front was originally recorded in '93 but was never released. Then in 2010, it was unearthed and released along with a series of aesthetically aligned visuals paying homage to the likes of Tribe Called Quest and Pharcyde during the genre's golden age. To be honest, by this point, I'm not even sure his real name is Umar anymore. I had to run to answer the door to Airbnb I happened to be staying in, and we joined the guys discussing Morrissey.
I think Manchester has become more of a upscale city than the late 70s and 80s as talked about by the Smiths.
Oh God, the Smiths! Don't get me started on the Smiths. My daughter was like in the Smiths. I was like, hey, look, I used to like the Smiths when I was a kid, but now Morrissey's like a fucking Nazi, man. Like,
yeah, what the hell? This is very interesting. That's one of those bands, right, where once you start hearing about Morrissey's political beliefs, it changes the music.
Yeah, yes and no. Like, okay, I can still listen to art. I can still listen to some. I mean, if an R. Kelly song came on, I'll be like, like it's something inherent in you that wants to make you move, but then you're like, yeah, I guess it does.
Just a little bit.
Yeah, so when I think about the Smiths, yeah, and Eric Clapton, man, like I used to love that piano scene at the end of Layla. And I know, but then, he did that thing I think it was at Wembley Stadium in the 70s where he was like, you fucking wogs and da-da-da, all this shit. What the fuck, bro? So ever since then, I mean, I was like, damn, I can't. First off, here's the hypocrisy of Eric Clapton. You make all your money stealing Black American blues music. Yeah. And then you go and disrespect all the brown people in the UK, and shit globally for that matter. It didn't matter if they were, where they were fucking geophysically located. Like, it was like, you did that, man. You did it. I don't know if he ever really got the backlash from it. Like,
not as much as he would have if he had done something like that now. Like, he'd be cancelled in a second. I don't know how we got to there.
You getting stabbed at the door in Manchester. We said that it's a little bit more upscale, so maybe it's not happening.
I got knifed by a delivery driver.
Yeah, it was like, no!
I just want my wings!
What should we tell his family? Like, and then you came back and kind of disappointed my long eulogy. I was already starting to write it down, man. Like it's like,
because we're off the rails and that's the way I want it.
Oh man, never ask me to talk about anything if you do not want the shit to go completely off fucking topic. Like that is my name claim to fame.
No, I was gonna say about your father being a playwright, and that seems like a really great place to start with the way that you approach a lot of the things that you do. Like, what is it like to grow up with a playwright?
Difficult.
I can imagine.
Because, like my father, not only is he a playwright, but he's also an actor and a painter as well. So I would have to see plays when my father dies. I would have to see plays when my father is like not such a great person. And, and it was really weird, but I realized like, oh man, we can be so many things and still be. So that, that's what like brought about my persona journeys. Like, you can be so many things and still be you.
Did that make it hard to understand who it was that you were talking to at the end of the day? You know, when you went home and you sat with him, did you understand the difference?
He wasn't, he did he did some plays where, he did a play called Passenger Past Midnight where he played Marvin Gaye. And he, so he lived through Marvin Gaye's whole life. He didn't do the singing parts, but, there was another actor, Kevin McIlvaine, not a Scotsman.
Sounds like he is, to be honest.
Conor McLeod from Clan McLeod.
Singing Marvin Gaye.
Singing Marvin.
It was like fucking Christopher Lambert. That's another weird thing. They have fucking a French dude playing a Highlander in the movie Highlander. They could have got Angus McFadden or goddamn...
Ewan McGregor.
Sean Connery was in it playing a Spaniard. So, man, that movie was all types of fucked up. Anyway.
Underrated classic, though.
Absolutely.
Not here, man. Highlander gets top marks in my book forever. That's like one of my favorite fucking movies. Like, I will watch Highlander like anytime. Yeah, it's like me in that movie Constantine with Keanu Reeves. Anyway, so, back to the whole thing, so he played, Marvin Gaye, so he would come home and he would be really feeling that pain that Marvin Gaye was going through. And so my brother and I, we would just say, okay, well, he's going through another one of his things, and then the show will be over and then he'll be on something new. Even to this day, my father, if you ever get a chance to meet him, which you should, because, he's around, hopefully I bring him out at some point now that we can move around more freely. That's just who he is. And my mother, my mother was a thespian too. My mother, actually, my parents met. My father played Malcolm X and my mother played Betty Shabazz. And that's actually how they met. It was a play called El Hajj Malik, which is the name that Malcolm X took towards the end of his life. Mm-hmm. So I actually grew up in a woke. I didn't have to wait until everybody else got ready. I started there. So that's another thing about the way that I look at things is looked at through a 40, I'll be 45 this year. So I'm looking at things from a 44-year-old lens already because that's the life that I was born into. So I'm not saying I have disdain or whatever for the infancy of most people's ideas, but I have had a longer time to look at it. And so that's why I make the decisions I do with regards to race and politics and things like that. I mean, still ultimately, I'm saying the same things that everybody else is saying, but there's just certain things that I realize don't work because I've seen it happen and I've seen it fail. I'm not a huge fan of marching, and that's just me.
Why?
Actually, I just really abhor crowds because you can't trust crowds. Every time there's some crowd activity, and something happens, people get trampled. I don't want to fucking get trampled to death, Yeah. And then, people have been marching, especially, black people in this country, we've been marching for a long time, since the 60s. With, if you look at, you could put the signs together. You could look at signs from 1965 in Birmingham, Alabama, in 2020 in whatever state, whatever metropolitan area in the United States, and the signs would be almost identical, asking for the same things. Now, what has changed in 45 years? Not a whole lot. So what that says to me is that the situation won't be resolved in this particular manner. I don't advocate violent reprisals because also I think that'll just, I don't know, man. It's got to be a better way.
So if there's not crowds and there's...
Whoa, what the fuck, man? My television just turned on.
Oh, that was the ghost of Malcolm.
Yeah, he was like, you don't advocate violent reprisals.
I'm going to put on The View for you right now.
Fuck all these motherfuckers, man. Kill them all. Put all the white people in the bucket and just shoot them all. You're like, what? What? No, man, dude. That if somebody just tuned in on that side, put all the white people in the bucket and shoot them all. I guess that's a real career-ending statement there. But this is what I really want to say. I think, and this is my opinion, but I really believe that the reason why it's been so hard, especially in this country, to get any kind of dialogue going, is because of white fear. If you've done something so horrible to a people for a very, very, very long time, you are always going to be apprehensive about them. Like you have to almost like keep your foot, like white America has to keep their foot on the necks of Black America because they fear reprisal. You know, I can't speak for England. I mean, I know England has its problems. I know France has its problems. Any colonial, or I should say the UK, maybe not the UK in general, but yeah, well, I mean, the UK.
It is the UK, to be honest. Scotland tries to get away from it and say, "Oh, we didn't." Hey, come on, Scotland, you played your part.
Scotland joined in, like
in the center of Glasgow, we have Jamaica Street. It's like, okay, why do you think we have a Jamaica Street in the center of Glasgow? It's not pretty.
And it was why is there so many Black Americans walking around with Scottish last names? Like, you know, it's like, you were part of it. Or your name wouldn't be here. Maybe not too many Black O'Tooles. Maybe the Irish, but you know, the Irish were so disappointing in the sense that, you know, they fought against all this backlash in the UK for a long time, and then came to the United States and became literally like the whitest of the white. And the same, I say the same could be said for the Italian community too. Like, you know, it's like, what? Like, y'all motherfuckers just became white like 2 days ago. The whole concept of whiteness or Blackness and these things intrigue me, and how we get to these places, and all of it has to do with fear, our need for inclusion, our need to be a part of something, you know. And so, like, I think white people in the United States, especially, and I'm only going to talk about the United States today, I think that white people in the United States are so afraid, again, like that, you know, Black people are going to rise up and kill everybody, you know, but that's not, I mean, I'm not saying that's not who we all are. Like, you know, I'm pretty sure there's some people who wouldn't mind, you know, doing some people in. And in a cosmic sense, fuck it. You know, that shit probably had to happen. But then, you know, you wouldn't pick out the people. You wouldn't pick out the people that absolutely needed to go. Like, it will go to somebody who's innocent. And so therefore, I don't advocate violence as a strategy, because you would be, you know, like a violent reaction would be against the people who don't deserve it. And just because somebody's being violent to you doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be violent to them. But I think this is the crux of the argument. And I think is socioeconomic conditions improve and there's, you know, freedom of mobility. But see, we don't even have that now. You know, it's hard to stem these particular tides because we don't even have, like, as Black Americans, like, when people, it's a fucking shame that I feel more comfortable riding my bike in Rotterdam in the Netherlands than I do riding down my own street where I grew up in Chicago.
Is that true?
Or, yeah. Like, I mean, shit, in the Netherlands, like, you know, you might see some unsavory motherfuckers, but Chicago, like, you know, the police, like, I mean, like, I've been accosted by the police so many times growing up. You know, and now I got some friends of mine, you know, who I grew up, went to school with, that are cops. And I was like, man, I'm sorry, man. Like, you know, I can't advocate any of this shit, but I love you. So I can separate the man, or I can separate the person from the ideology. I can. That is absolutely necessary, you know.
I like what you just said there. And you seem to have grown up where identity, allegory, metaphors were something that was brought home to you, because if your parents are working in theater, like, they're dealing, there's this way that you're trying to tell a story that's different than just literal interpretations of what happened, right? And you don't do literal.
Well, I mean, it is literal in it that all the stories that I make are just facsimiles of stories that I read. So, like, you know, about where Doug's, the north of Doug's, the house of Doug in Culloden. Like, you know, like, if I ever try to remake the Battle of Culloden, it'll be probably have similar results, or maybe it'll have totally different results. I don't know. There's actually an interesting thing about Scotland in my little history, but I haven't gotten the chance to go there because my brother-in-law lives in Glasgow. But I was like, man, dude, that fucking light thing, like, where you guys don't get any light for a couple of days. That's odd, right? Like, it's like daytime forever.
Yeah, that you got to go right up. You won't get that in Glasgow. Glasgow, you're gonna just get grey. It goes from grey to dark to grey.
Grey to dark.
And then there's one day a year where the sun comes out and everyone just loses their shit.
Oh yeah, it's like, yeah.
Then we get boozed up and try to invade England.
I was gonna say, and then it gets stabby, and people get stabbed.
I supported the referendum on Scottish independence.
And you'll support the next one, I hope.
Oh, well, I mean, it's not like I could do anything, but I did try. I was like, maybe Scotland should be independent. Like, we'll have Scotland will just be a distillery with haggis and some really cool castles. And, Sean Connery will come back to life.
Yeah. Rod Stewart and Belle and Sebastian music just playing everywhere constantly.
Rod Stewart's Scottish?
No, he's actually from England, but he's got a very good relationship with
Oh, does he?
Scotland.
Okay. I thought he was Scottish.
I'm just quickly double checking. I think he's from England. He was born in London.
Okay, so let's take that back. Just a bunch of Belle and Sebastian playing everywhere in Scotland.
Belle and Sebastian, I'm pretty sure.
Franz Ferdinand and Belle and Sebastian playing everywhere.
Boards of Canada?
Oh, Boards of Canada, yeah. I was just
why?
listening to Twoism the other day. And isn't Aphex Twin, they're English.
He's English.
The Cranberries? No.
I think that's Irish.
I think we're just spiraling.
Hey, man. I mean, I literally was just talking about how to avoid mass deaths.
And then we ended up with reanimating Sean Connery, the natural progression for that conversation.
No, but okay. So I think ultimately, back to the question at hand, if you wouldn't mind rephrasing that.
I'm going to ask you another question because we're going to move on because we'll be back at Sean Connery soon enough. Don't worry.
Sean!
Was religion part of your upbringing, and how did that? How was your relationship with that?
That's a very interesting question. So, growing up, even with my name, I grew up primarily Christian, and in the African, various, I studied, my parents were into various African spiritualities, and that's another thing about Black people in the United States. Even during that period of the awakening, I would say, it was necessary so the reason why I had the name that I have, because my mother and my father used to travel back and forth to Nigeria, Senegal, Cote d'Ivoire, Ghana, every once and again, and so my father and my mother were hanging out with Fela Kuti and some of Fela's friends.
Wow.
They were like, hey, you should name, if it's going to be a girl, you should name her Rashida, and if it's a boy, you should name him Umar. And then, so I was a boy, so they named me Umar Rashid. So that's my whole first name. I'm not going to tell you my slave name, the name that was given to me by the captors of my people. 2 reasons.
It's Scottish, isn't it?
No, it's like, it is MacLeod.
Thank you for approaching that so sensitively.
I was like, yo, Doug, me and you might be kin, bro.
A next awkward family reunion.
True, it's true. I'm pretty sure there is some Scottish, Scots-Irish, somewhat, lineage. And that's we'll talk about that later on down the pike. So they named me this name, even though, they were raised in a Christian tradition. So I went through all the denominations of Christianity, from Baptist to Apostolic to Catholic. It was Catholic is where I ended up. And there's the thing about Catholicism that I really enjoy is the gilded nature of it. Is very showy. It's very showy, kind of in the ceremony. I really like the ceremony. So when I was in getting out of high school, I had converted to Islam around that time, and so I was practicing. I took the Shahada. I was a practicing Muslim for some years, but then I met my wife, who's from Japan, who introduced me to Shinto and Buddhism. And so I stopped practicing organized religion after a while. So I respect all faiths.
Did you find a common thread between those major ones that you practiced?
Well, it's just Abrahamic religions, definitely there's a common, especially through, between Christianity and Islam. The middle and the end, because it all begins with Judaism, with the Abraham, all the Abrahamic faiths come from Abraham. identified as Jewish, or whatever Jewish was back in those days. So the Abrahamic faith. And then, it's the Torah, the Injil, and the Quran, the three books that hold these faiths together. But then again, at the end of the day, I couldn't say that any one of those faiths represented me, just like how any of my personas became the complete me. Like I needed to understand them. I needed to practice these faiths in order to understand them on a personal level. And, it's like, hey, nowadays, the world is pretty much known. You can be anywhere in 24 hours on this planet. So you have to go through, the journeys that we take these days are more introspective. They're more journeys into ourselves rather than they're journeys of exploration and, finding new lands and, oh, this sea moss is great. Perhaps we will figure out some way to cure cancer. Said nobody ever. You go through these phases. And I wouldn't say it was a phase because when I did practice these religions, I was very devout. I used to sing, I loved going to Juma with my friends at the masjid that I went to. And we would have discussions over a meal, especially during Ramadan. It was really nice, to talk to.
Did you fast?
I fasted, yeah.
Wow.
And it was great. And then there's something, I'm going to talk some really great points about Islam. Is 5 times a day you pray. So you keep your mind is active at least 5 times a day on something that's greater than oneself. So there's incredible beauty in Islam. And I really do believe that it is more peaceful than not peaceful. But then again, it's not, I don't have to. Now I'm at a place where I don't have to follow any particular organized religion to feel more of myself, because, everybody says that if you don't follow us, you're condemning, everybody else is going to just fall off. They'll be like lemmings off a fucking cliff. And I can't abide by that. That's as far as I take it. So I take the best teachings out of everything that I've learned, and I incorporate that into the person that I am today. I take the best of everything.
Do you apply any rituals to what you're doing in the studio? Do you have behaviors that you've learned from religion and ritualistic practices into what you're doing as an artist?
Yeah, I like to clean my penis with salt.
It was such a straight question as well. It was the first straight question of the whole podcast. The first question that was anything to do with your art or your practice.
All right. Yeah, man. I take that Himalayan stuff that you get from the good places, and I chip it up and I sandwich my penis in between. Actually, I guess
your mom is gonna love this one, Evan.
She will never. Oh, not your mama, Evan. Not your mama. Don't have your mama. Just put this one. Put a big red X on it. Put a big red X on this one, man. Don't ever have your mother listen to me. She'll be like, this guy is fucking insane, and you should never be his friend, Evan.
All of a sudden, she's buying a painting. It's hanging over the dining room table.
And I was like, but it's me with the Himalayan rock salt wash. No, when I walk in,
it was the sandwich part that got me.
Yeah, I was like, yeah, you take 2 slabs of this healing rock.
Love it.
They're weird. It's like I go in and I don't know. I've always felt somewhat psychic. I always felt like I always had these kind of powers to be able to sense things. And today was weird. I was on my way to the studio to do this, and I lost my keys. I left my keys at home. So that's why my wife was arguing, because she wanted me to take some garbage down. And I was like, I can't take it down because I have to hurry up and get to this podcast, because I was thinking it was 9:00. So I was trying to rush out of here. So I had left my keys. And then my daughter called me. She's like, you left your keys, Papa. You got to come back and get your keys. And then I came back here, and it was but I was feeling this heaviness. And maybe the heaviness was I kind of knew how important Evan is in my life, as my soulmate and life partner, because ever since we locked eyes across the studio, I always knew that you were the one for me. No, it's what the fuck?
fucking railed.
I was like, just seeing you sitting there on that chair.
we had a magical first
Dude, that was a great first meeting, man. That was a great first meeting.
Your studio is incredible. I mean, if you would have seen his studio, you're like looking at it like, this is like a rundown tax like collector's office or whatever. And then like above it, you have your wonderful studio. It's so LA. It's perfect. It's perfect.
Sounds beautiful.
I wanted to be like a gallery one day, like or like a pilgrimage site, like on the. It was like Umar died from dementia. Had Doug shoot him in the back of the head, just right outside of Manchester proper. I was like, Doug, do it now, Doug. Don't hesitate. Do it. I feel it coming. It's taking over me.
This is gonna be great because if anybody fast forwards through this to kind of jump around,
it's like an EKG of a motherfucker who's about to die. Like it's just beep, 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 beep. It's ups and downs. No, but my practice really is when I go inside the studio, like I, kind of, say hello to it, like almost like it's like a nurturing place, like when things happen, when bad people come, I put some salt down and all these ritualistic practices that I've taken from, dozens of cultures. And I remember, well, actually recently, so I just got accused of cultural appropriation. And I was like, have you read anything that I've ever written? Like, I appropriate fucking everything because I'm making a story about the goddamn whole world. So yes, I have appropriated things, but not in a way that your small fucking mind thinks that I'm appropriating. And I'm appropriating so that it is included in its right and proper context. Not like so I can make lots of money. Well, making money is nice, but I'm not doing it to like, I didn't start this project and I do call it a project because when I first moved to LA, I wanted to be a filmmaker. I wanted to do photography, and then I was just so old that the technology had shifted, and I had to paint. Like that was the only thing I could do, and my rap career was going nowhere because nobody wanted to hear. Well, at the time I was 24. Nobody wanted to hear a 24-year-old person talk about social justice at that time. Well, they did, and it was kind of cool. But I made two albums about that. Again, I've lived a bunch of different lives, and so I was actually kind of taken aback by somebody who was so fucking short-sighted they would accuse me of cultural appropriation for financial gain. But I don't know who this person is yet, but when I find these motherfuckers,
bullet in the back of the head.
Yeah, I was like, no, you said that, Doug.
I'm gonna have a constructive conversation with them.
I was like, on the record, I was like, I would like to have a lunch with you. Are you adverse to eating tuna because of an ethical choice decision or because you are just allergic to fish? Hi, I would like to address you in a antagonistic way at first, but then possibly become your friend over time. Allow us to engage in fisticuffs upon the green.
Is that what it was like growing up in the south side of Chicago? Was that a very common experience? Fisticuffs on the green?
It could have been Doug, but I've always been a trickster. I've always been able to talk myself out of brutal violence.
I believe that.
By distraction. Like, it's like a sleight of hand. Like, it's like, hey, man, look there. Whoa. I wasn't very fast. I was actually quite a little chubby little guy. I was never fast. I was never very strong. But I was always aware of the Jedi mind trick. They were like, hey, we want to take your money. You do not want this money. Hey, we're going to beat you up. You would not like to do that. These are not the droids you're looking for. But in Chicago, it was, but I also just, I've also like, and it's the same way now, like I can just, how weird it is that so many people don't know how to read a room. Like when they walk into a room and they can't read the energy there. Like I've seen this happen so many times. Like that's the first thing you should teach your kid. Like for like child rearing, the first thing you should teach your child is how to read a room.
Yeah.
There'll be a lot less kidnappings, a lot less fuck shit. Like, you know, you come in there and you see some sweaty looking motherfuckers, man, that's, you know, it's a danger alert unless they're like coal miners. You know, I always knew how to read my surroundings. And I knew that, you know, my neighborhood wasn't the rosiest. Despite growing up where I grew up, there's always good people too. You know, there's always people. I mean, nobody really lends help except for like the older generation. That's another thing that's different from now. Like the old, like I think we would have far less mass shootings if people just stepped in initially, helped out. But everybody's like, it's not my problem. My name is Wes. I ain't in this mess. My name is Paul. This is between y'all. You know, so everybody thinks that, you know, like, oh, you see like, you know, somebody walking down the street with a fucking 357 Magnum. Like everybody gets out of the way. Nobody wants to be that person is gonna take that first bullet. Sadly, I was always that person who would go to try to diffuse a situation before it became a situation. But that is a rarity in these days and times because we are so disconnected. We're so connected on social media, but we're so disconnected in socialism. That was wrong. Fuck that. Scratch that.
But it works.
There's something in there.
Yeah. I mean, somebody else could make it better, but remember to credit me, one of the greatest minds of the 21st century, Jackson Rashid, a.k.a. Umar Rashid, a.k.a. Ferrari.
I feel like this was a good place for a quick pit stop. Maybe just time to take stock over the last 40 minutes, process a little of what's been in discussion before we jump back into it. Usually by this time we'd like to feel that you, the listener, has been offered a unique insight into the practices and methodology of a guest, but not today, my friend. No, not today. If you've ever found yourself sitting in a stranger's flat after a club at like 5 a.m, this is that energy that we're channeling today. If there is one thing that we have learned so far, it's that if Umar Rashid ever passes you his Himalayan rock salt, it is probably best to give it a pass.
Can you tell us about the process and how you get to that final image in a painting?
Usually it starts with the research, but if I'm not doing a show about anything that's in you know, specifically, like I usually do like 6 months of research and 6 months of execution. So say for now, I've already researched the vast majority of the hard points. And, you know, so I just get into the intricacies later on. So right now, I'm doing this narrative and I'm trying to finish this narrative about the American West and also like parts of New Spain. So that's been the focus for the past 5 years. 5 years before that, I did New England. And I was talking about New England. And in between, I did a show in the UK. I did a show in London, which, you know, kind of reintroduced that story. But not necessarily in London, but, you know, I'm trying to, you know, because right now where I am chronologically, I'm in what would be my version of the Napoleonic era, which actually somehow corresponds with the actual Napoleonic era. So we're talking the end of the 18th century.
What do you mean by that you're in the Napoleonic era? What does that mean?
Well, I mean, Napoleon doesn't exist in my world, but there is somebody else that resembles Napoleon in mannerism because of the nature of how the last war. So like, yeah, I really wish I would have sent you guys the dossier of the writings before, because you could read it all. Like I've written all this stuff down. So not only do I paint it, but I write it in the story form. So there's like long essays. Man, why is Crate and Barrel hitting me up for Memorial Day, man? I don't need no couches. Crate and Barrel is like a store here that sells shit that you don't need.
Sometimes you need it. If you need like a coffee maker.
Is that a holiday there?
It's a holiday on Monday.
Okay.
Sort of.
In the States, it's a barbecue holiday. Like people like, we want to remember these ribs. Like, you know, it's supposed to be for like people who passed away, but basically it's about remembering the cow or the pig or the goat or whatever else has been slaughtered that got barbecued up and eaten by 30 people. Fight breaks out at some point, but then it's quickly chilled out and people begin to move on to bigger and better things. So that's how, for instance, like the solo cut paintings, like I like to have fun with the work sometimes. So when I do like paintings like that, it's like taking all this stuff, all this really serious, colonial business, and then reducing it to like, just this kind of humorous element where it's like, it can live. It has its own space to live. But I tackle all the problems. Like I did a show in Memphis about 3 years ago where I tackled, I was talking about directly to slavery and things like that. I usually try to avoid talking about the hot ticket items because, you can see now there's so many shows about slavery, but I don't want to mark or denote the African-American experience of being completely rooted in slavery because we were far more than that. And I feel that America, again, does us such a disservice by, referring to us as, the descendants of slavery. I mean, although that is true, in essence, it is not the sum totality of who we are. But if you see that image of yourself as a slave all the time, it's the same thing that goes all the way back to the beginning of the conversation, talking about white supremacy. If you talk about white supremacy and you keep saying that word, you eventually trick yourself into believing that white people is supreme. So I just write this story. I just spin this tale, I did the war. The beginning of this story happens at the end of the English Civil War, the death of Oliver Cromwell, when the Stuarts, your folks,
top boys,
yeah,
good cunts.
Good. Top boys. Good cunts. Oh man, we need to do part 1 through 4 of this, man. This I think this shit is great. So yeah, so instead of having the Stuarts take over, like for that brief period they did before they invited the Germans in to be the King of England. And that's another. Well, anyway, I can keep saying that's another thing because it is always one more thing. That's how fluid history is. Like people are like, oh yeah, the Queen, blah blah blah. They're all Germans from Hanover, right? People don't even know that. Like they think that they're like the most proper British people. They're all Germans from Hanover. Just like the Queen of Greece. The King of Greece was like Danish or some shit. And they got rid of his ass in 1971 or some shit. Oh, man, fuck all this. That's that Habsburg shit.
How often are you looking through history books and researching where you go, oh shit, I did not know this, and it changes your perception of where the show's going or where your consciousness goes. Every
day. Every day I find something. I find something new to be wowed by, and that's what keeps me going. Finding new things. I knew about, because I have a character in my story called the Bonnie Prince. It was the Bonnie Prince Johnny, and he grew up in Edinburgh, and they were trying to, they were angry that France and England had merged into Fringland, so they felt kind of left out. They were like, "Fuck all this," So then they were like it was a sub narrative, the Kings of York, And, sometimes people they're like, why do you know so much about European history? It's just because it's most readily accessible. The history of most, indigenous and, people of color is a little harder to find, but it's still there. So, I try to marry the two. I try to do as much research, but, because of the lack of, scholarly research into other people other than Europeans, you have to almost kind of use what little information you have about, what everybody else is doing during the colonial period. And then you have to, kind of formulate gaps. You have to extract from the gaps in European history. So it's really syncretic. And that is a word that I use a lot in the work. all my work it involves syncretism, because it is necessary to be able to tell these stories in a way, because a lot of the information just isn't there. So you have to merge these two cultures, these different places, these far-flung places. I started like 20 years ago, like 10 years ago, I started a story about the subcontinent as well, about what happens in India, because it really is a global narrative. But it just so happens that right now I happen to be talking about the United States, or what would have been the United States. And I'm not talking about these other places, but, it's really, I wanted to make a story for the whole world, because that's what saved me. And in addition to being a trickster and a chameleon in Chicago, what really saved me is that knowing that there's a whole vast world of people and cultures and communities. And so I was very interested in how, all of this came about. But also the question was, why aren't there more people who look like me in the books? And I went to a grammar school. My elementary school was called Alexander Dumas. And Alexander Dumas, wrote The Three Musketeers. But he was like, he was black for all. If he was in America, he would have been fully black, because all you need is one drop of black blood. But, the guy who wrote The Count of Monte Cristo, The Count of Monte Cristo, the Count of Monte shortening, the Count of Monte Large, but the Count of Monte Cristo, he wrote these with the Man in the Iron Mask, is a black dude. And his father served in Napoleon's army. Well, the Revolutionary Army prior to that, prior to the ascent of Napoleon. So it's just all these wonderful histories that we pay no attention to. But I think it is almost absolutely necessary to learn these histories, to study these histories, so we don't repeat the same mistakes. But we do it all the fucking time.
That's all we do.
Which leads me to the next big question. What truly is human nature? Because we can all get with everybody, and we can all have kids with each other. We can all live together. Like, it's not, it's not like, it's like, black cat, calico, Persian, Abyssinian, they can all fuck each other and produce offspring. It's not like a mule and a horse and a donkey that, produces what is it? Yeah, horse and a donkey that produce
a honky?
Oh, these fucking honkies. No. Those goddamn honkies. You cannot produce a baby with a honky. No, but it's basically, like a horse, horse and a donkey makes a mule, which is sterile, or like, a lion and a tiger, they're both felids, but they can produce a liger in certain circumstances. But, that's the thing, like, phenotypically, yeah, we all look different. Yeah, but we can all procreate with each other. So what is the...
Was this idea of revisionist history something that's always been with you, or was there like a kind of a eureka moment, a moment where you had picked up a certain book and thought, hang on, this has just told me something that's completely blown everything out, so I need to reassess everything?
It was a eureka moment in the sense that, that whole trickster element of my existence is to say that I wanted to make something that was going to be, that I could do forever. Because in art, like people always have like writing, writers, like, you get writer's block, artist block, and I just wanted to have something that I made that I could do for the rest of my life. And this is what it became. So it was a eureka moment, but it was also a moment in which like I just kind of planned out my future. I made something that I could do forever and ever and ever and ever and ever and ever. I tell my kids, I was like, hey, I want you guys to learn this story just in case Uncle Doug has to pop Daddy in the back of the head, But like we had to go like in the out of international waters. We'll be in like the North Sea somewhere.
They always love that bedtime story.
Near the Isle of Man. And I was like, yes, kids. Where your father goes.
I'm so glad we had an Isle of Man reference in this podcast.
The new one.
The Isle of Man. Do you know isn't that where the Bee Gees? I think that's where the Bee Gees are from. I want to know, and all this stuff that you're talking about, all these things that you're talking about, and all these like incredible ways of looking at history and ways of creating art, built into these stories that you're telling and that you're researching. Has anything changed for you as the attention and collector base has changed in the last couple years?
Yeah, because I think what I'm doing is I'm kind of leveling out. And normally my MO was always to just move so far in the future. My friend, the rapper and bard Serengeti, he spoke to me one time, and I felt that it was very accurate. He was like, Umar lives in the future and comes back to the present to give his own power presence. So I literally live not here, so I'm so far, I try to stay so far ahead because I don't, I don't want to be caught in this wave, of react. I hate reactionary shit. I hate reactivism. I want to be able to come from a position of strength and come from a position of absolute, to talk about these things in the way in which they need to be talked about right at that particular time. Not always, because, that, and I don't think I talked about it earlier. I think that's the problem, is that most revolutionary activities are always reactionary. You can't you have to be proactive in your revolution. You can't be reactive in your revolutionary ideals. So I think, I'm being proactive, so I'm taking a stance. I'm not saying that this is the only stance that can be taken, but, I just choose to show people what can happen, the possibilities, what can happen, and also illustrate what has happened, what has occurred, and get people into history and knowing what our history is, and to try not to fucking repeat that shit, maybe not much can be said for us. Maybe we're fucking doomed. I have no idea. But we're going to have a good time because, like I said in the beginning, you're going to be Evan once, you're going to be Doug once, it's going to be Umar once, So it all, everything comes back full circle at some point, But as far as collectors go, I think that's more of a market thing than it is about my work. I don't think anybody's just oh man, this guy's brilliant, or this guy's a total fucking dick, or this guy really loves Himalayan rock salt, but who knows?
Just make sure you have Bill Powers send this podcast out to all of his collector base and see how they feel.
Yeah, no, but
unedited.
Oh
no, but we'll call it uncut.
Oh man, this has been great. But no, but you know what? I do think that now people, for whatever it's worth, I think people are opening up to the idea that, there's a problem here, and we need to support these differing voices, and Kerry James Marshall talks about the same thing, but he does it in his own way. And David Hammond's been talking about it in his own way. And Leslie Starr, she goes into a cosmic kind of a journey as well. And so there's a bunch of Black American artists right now that are addressing this, but how far they get is is really up to the market. So I don't really focus on the market so much. I should, because maybe I could get out of my I don't know, maybe I can get a swimming pool at some point. You'll see me and I'll be Michael Phelps in my next life. Actually, it can't be Michael Phelps. That dude's like a fucking mutant anyway. Man, you know what? Oh, last thing I'm going to say, we should bring back duels to satisfy agreements between people. But love you, brothers. Take care.
All right. Take care.
See ya. Have a good rest of your day.
Peace, peace. Don't let your mother listen to this podcast.
Sweet, sweet chop, chop. With my cutlass sword, all aboard the Grim Express. Please prepare for war by the grace.
I never did get to find out the role Optimus Prime plays in Umar's depiction of colonial battles, but I'm not sure if I'd asked I would have gotten an answer anyway. It's great to be back with you all. I hope this episode finds you well. Till next time, take care of yourselves and each other. Peace.
Something bad happened to Doug. We might have to cut this broadcast because we don't want to here. Back to you in the studio, Evan. I just want to let you know, Doug did not make it. He went down to go get his takeaway, and this motherfucker got murdered in his foyer.